all kinds of claims there about gender identity. I understand gender very clearly to be about a political system. Gender is what I would call the cultural wing of male domination and male-dominated society. We might want to call it patriarchy. So gender is actually about normalising certain codes of appearance and behaviour and norms and attributes according to whether you're male or female. So we can see that that young girls are basically socialised to be feminine and boys are socialised to be masculine, and this is all about reproducing a set of power relations between between these two, what we could call classes of people. I don't think there's any evidence whatsoever that any of us have this kind of innate gender identity. That's a term that, again, it's been kind of used as a narrative, and it's been very successfully used as a narrative to try and persuade people that we have some kind of innate, Bruce, or now Caitlyn Jenner, refers to himself as having a female soul, for example. There's, where does this soul reside? What is it? We can see that for Bruce Jenner, who then makes this claim of being a woman, that manifests itself by doing a magazine photo shoot, wearing some kind of white corset and wig and makeup, trying to make this claim that he's a woman. Well, I would challenge him, and I would challenge Heather as well, to actually tell me what a woman is. If it's just down to that any male can claim to be a woman because of some sort of feeling, I want to know what do they say that a woman is, because I understand what a woman is an adult human female, and it's based that definition is based very clearly on our sex bodies, and women who are born into patriarchal society grow up with all kinds of disadvantages, stereotypes inflicted on us, the whole processes of feminisation inflicted on us, male violence against women inflicted on us, and I think it's for so-called trans women then to treat womanhood as if it's some kind of costume that can be put on because of some kind of fantasy of being a woman and fantasy of femininity, I think is yet another boundary violation of women.
I'm going to necessarily come back in just 2 seconds to Heather there, as you can both imagine. Just one particular thing in Heather's statement that I wanted to just run past you, which is the statement that questioning someone's self-declared gender identity is, I think, use the word rude, discourteous in that sense. That's clearly something that you don't accept as a boundary. You feel that that's basically drawing off a boundary that shouldn't actually be there.
I think we absolutely have to question it, because I think that whole notion that this is something that can't be questioned, and we see that an increasingly, a really hostile climate to women who are raising concerns about this, incredibly hostile. People bringing, trans activists bringing vexatious prosecutions against women for raising these concerns, attempts to shut down. I mean, this is really amazing to me that this event has happened seemingly without a big, protest outside of it. The very, very censorious and increasingly, really aggressive, hostile climate that is being directed at women who raise these concerns. I think it's all the more important. That tells me that actually what we're doing is something very important, and we do have to challenge and question claims made by men that they're women, because it's producing all kinds of harms we can see in terms of women's sports, women's prisons, women's refuges, across a whole different range of areas. That this is a very it's a violation, I would say, of women's boundaries.
So a lot to take on and take in there, I think, Heather, but could I come back to you for a reply?
Yes, I mean, most of the so-called debates that is hostile is based on misinformation about transgender people and taking an example of a transgender person who isn't pleasant and saying that applies to everyone who's transgender. Now, in terms of just coming back about the gender identity, it's a bit like saying to someone about their sexuality, no, you can't be gay, no, you can't be a lesbian, etc., or you can't be bisexual.
It isn't.
You are actually sort of like, I say that is actually something you can't be. It's ridiculous. And a gender identity, there is an evolutionary purpose, a reason why gender identity arose. It was from primate brain development, actually, to be a head start to children learning in primates. And because it's all about social structure, that was a gender identity probably arose from that. But the gender identity doesn't define what women should be. It just happens that my gender identity that was female, or is female, I just happen to learn all the stereotypes and everything else, or be bombarded with them, just like other women are. And one of the things is, I won't have anyone judge me for sort of like one of the more bizarre things that you have from the radical anti-trans people is that sort of like saying, well, you don't look like a woman, etc. Well, sort of like, surely that's a backtrack on feminism, isn't it? Sort of like saying what a woman should look like, or we should police people that go into bathrooms, etc., based upon their appearance. And, you know, comically almost, sort of like I've had straight allies to me being misgendered because they thought, oh, this person hanging around with Heather who's transgender and out as transgender, they must be transgender too. And, you know, that's just ridiculous. So
I think we can dress up these, this very recent, very current social phenomenon of transgenderism and the claims around gender identity. I think that we can. I think that that can be dressed up with all kinds of cod science, but I would draw your attention to the work of Gina Rippon, who's recently written a book dispelling these myths about the kind of sexed brain and these really insulting claims that there's a pink brain and a blue brain and all this kind of thing. I think we can dispel that. I think we have to understand things that happen as social trends, and when we look at the referrals of young people to gender identity clinics, we can see that has absolutely rocketed up in the last sort of 5 to 10 years. There's been an increase of young women in particular with what's termed, you might have come across this term, rapid onset gender dysphoria, which is a gender dysphoria that they're affected by a kind of distress that they're experiencing in their usually in their sort of like early to mid-teens. That has gone up by they've been presenting at gender identity clinics. There's been an increase of around 4,000% in just a few years. So I think we really have to question this notion of a kind of evolutionary blah blah blah, because what we're seeing, just as we saw with generations before, I remember when I was growing up, I remember my mother's generation were a very medicated generation. A lot of women, sort of housewives then, were on antidepressants. That was a phenomenon of those days. Then later on we had eating disorders, particularly affecting young women, teenage girls. Then obviously we've seen self-harm, and I would see all these phenomena that we're seeing now, like young women experiencing huge distress around their bodies. When I was in the States recently, I heard from a nurse in a hospital in Marin County who told me that they were conducting between 4 and 6 double mastectomies every day on young women, on the healthy bodies of young women. So I think this is something that is very concerning to me in terms of a social trend that has very harmful consequences, and that seems to be wheeled in by using these kind of ideas of authenticity and gender identity. There's all kinds of very serious harms being done, particularly to young lesbians. So I think that's something that we might want to talk about.
I'm going to come back for a very quick riposte from Heather, because we must make sure that we don't lose sight of the plastic surgery, which we'll come on to. But Heather, quick reply.
Gina Rippon's actual point was actually gender identity is something that appears to have developed actually in the womb, as in a focus on which gender you will actually learn from. Her point, and it's a very important point, is that the brain is plastic, as in it's mouldable, and it learns and it changes according to how it is taught, etc. And that is where a gender brain might come in, is actually the stereotypes that you learn.